This episode is sponsored by Aramas International Lawyers, with offices in Manchester, UK, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Qatar, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Aramas International Lawyers is a dedicated team of international divorce and family lawyers. This division, led by solicitor Samara Iqbal, has been set up to exclusively offer legal advice and legal services to clients around the world. For further details, please visit www.aramaslawexpat.com. In this episode, we are joined by Samara Iqbal, who is a global solicitor specializing in family law and divorce. Samara and I will discuss her role in an upcoming and new project where she will be on a panel as a legal and Sharia expert in the Sharia Council, causes of divorce, men versus women in light of divorce, prenuptial agreements, expat work that Samara deals with, divorce stories that Samara has experienced in her professional career, and polygamy and Mehar. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Brothers and sisters, in today's episode, we are joined by a divorce lawyer, Samara Iqbal, global solicitor with over 20 years of experience in international family law. She is the director and founder of Aramas International Lawyers, who, by the way, have sponsored today's episode. Samara is a specialist in divorce, including international divorce. And what is interesting about Samara is that she specializes in advising international expat divorces and family litigation worldwide for all nationalities, including British citizens. Samara set up her own law firm in 2019 in Manchester, and she's eventually expanded and now has offices in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. In terms of education, Samara has a master's in Islamic education from the University of Winchester, and as part of this, she completed part of her formal Islamic studies in Syria, making her an Islamic scholar in the UK. She is a knowledgeable expert in Sharia law and Arabic court proceedings. What's also interesting is that she is also a part of a panel as a legal and Sharia expert for the UK's first female Sharia Council, which is led by the Muslim Women's Council. This, by the way, is up and coming. And this, of course, enables Samara to assist her female clients with any Sharia divorce applications. So without any further ado, Sister Samara, assalamu alaikum, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for having me, Brother Mohammed. So it's nice for you to do such a nice introduction about me. I'm really honored. So thanks for having me.
No worries. And thank you for sponsoring this episode as well.
Obviously, when I came to know about this, I was quite happy that something like this is going on. I think it's quite important. So yeah, we're more than happy to sponsor an episode and hopefully people can benefit from this conversation.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me start off with the whole being on the panel as a legal and Sharia expert in the Sharia Council, right? I understand it's up and coming and new. I want to begin with, what is the UK's first female Sharia Council? What is that?
So basically, this has been kind of up and coming for the last year or so. So we've had lots of discussions, a website has been made, and obviously people are now accessing it, but it's just still not 100% kind of live. So this is something that was gauged to have more have legal people on the panel, as well as obviously people that are focused solely on Sharia law. There is a few female Sharia scholars on there, and there's 2 lawyers as well, which includes myself and someone else. And I think the whole focus was this, to have something that was still ticking all the boxes in terms of women or anybody coming forward to access services, to apply for things, and having our own board where we would have annual meetings and every I think it's 6 weeks having biannual meetings just to discuss and approve these applications that are coming through. Because what we're finding is lots of women are going to Sharia councils in the UK, which I'm not going to criticize any, which are fine. But obviously they're finding that sometimes the men, their husbands come in and are swaying certain people because they've got relationships with them, and there's a bit of bias. And I think we wanted to be just a different kind of organization, but still being able to help these women with their applications. So I think that was the idea. And I think obviously I've come on board because they wanted someone that had the Sharia side, and obviously the legal side as well, to be able to assist with queries and anyone's application that comes through from a legal perspective as well. So I think it's brilliant. It's definitely up and coming, and I think it's a really good initiative that's being done. So yeah, watch this space. There should be more about this coming soon.
That's really good news, inshallah. Hopefully we'll call you back once you have that all set up. I'm sure a lot of women in the UK would be very, very happy to hear.
Yeah, well, it's same for me, Mohammed. So when I'm doing UK divorces now, a lot of these women are saying, we want to also do the Sharia one because he's not going to give me a divorce and I'm entitled to one for whatever reasons they've got, whether it's, domestic abuse or anything else. And obviously I have to recommend Sharia Council, but now it's just great that we can kind of all do it kind of in-house. And I'm able to kind of be part of that to say, yes, this is a client of mine and I know the story. And it'll just make it so much easier for my clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Samara, I want to focus on reasons for divorce. You have extensive experience when it comes to divorce. So from your experience, what would you say are the most common causes for divorce in the British Muslim community?
For the British Muslim community, I would say there's quite a few reasons. The main one sometimes that I'm getting in the Asian community is mainly things like conflicts within the family. So a lot of them are obviously the girl or the husband getting married and the families are not getting on. She's having issues as she's living with her in-laws. That's quite common. And they can't see eye to eye. And then she kind of leaves because someone said something. And then they kind of can't really reconcile. So I think a lot of it is family issues. I say that's the first reason. Secondly is, I think, just couples themselves. They can have communication issues. They kind of might like each other or think that they will get on and then they can't. They start having kids and everything's busy and they just can't talk to each other and they just literally go silent on each other. And that causes more kind of resentment and issues. And I think also, obviously, sometimes another partner is abusive or is violent or is aggressive, and that doesn't help. Could it be the man or the woman? And I think that can cause extra issues and they're just hard to live with. I think a lot of people now have, as time and time goes on, obviously people have issues, and I know who doesn't have any issues, but I think when you're living with someone, it can just become more and more highlighted in a relationship when it's quite intense and when there's extra stresses of financial pressures and family pressures, and then that kind of ugly side comes out on the other person, and then the other person doesn't like it and then they just completely shut off, and then next thing you know, they want to divorce. They're like, I can't live with him or I can't live with her. She's like this or she's ignoring me. We get extra situations, obviously, when somebody's married a revert or somebody's, they're split up because they just don't get on and then there's issues with the kids. But I think generally so many reasons, but they're the probably three that I can think of. But the list goes on. There's just so many different things that people have issues with. But I would just say family issues in the Asian community. Sometimes somebody marries from a different culture, then she has trouble fitting in and then they split up. Then you have issues with communication, like I said, financial issues. And then sometimes it just could just be that we didn't really know each other that well. We've got married and we don't really get on. We're very, very different. And I can't see this working. And they try everything to make it work sometimes as well. I think, to be honest, from what I've seen over the years, people kind of give up a lot more easier now on, I'm sure you know this as well, marriage, without kind of trying different ways of trying to make it work, which Islamically you should. You should definitely try and get families involved or get mediators or even getting some help, even if it's counselling, if that's required, or mediation, just to see if you can make this marriage work, if there's any way before you call it quits. But I've seen that more and more young couples, as soon as, something happens, they just kind of quit quite easily. I think that's quite sad as well. So you see so many young couples coming forward saying, I want a divorce, and they're not even been married very long and they've got no kids. So it's just kind of sad that they're not really giving it a chance.
Another question I had for you is that, given that you've been in family litigation for 20 years, what changes, if there have been at all, what changes have there been when it comes to causes for divorce over the last 20 years in the Muslim community? Has it been the same? Has something been more prominent now than it was before? What would you say?
I think the causes are similar to the causes that never changed. I think maybe now more, everyone's a bit more vocal about, he's got an addiction or she has this issue, or he's got bipolar, more and more people are highlighting other issues of why they're getting divorced. So it could be like he's always drinking and I didn't know, or he's gambling, You get more and more people now probably saying this is the cause, like I can't live with him because he's doing this, or he's out all the time and, or he's having lots of affairs or whatever. So I think people are a bit more vocal about what the actual cause is, as opposed to in the past, they would just say, look, it's not working out. But I think it's just still the same. I wouldn't say it's changed too much, just people being a bit more vocal about maybe addictions and other issues that people are having. There's a lot more intermarriages. So a lot of, for example, Asian Muslims, British Asian Muslims are now getting married to beavers. So different cultures, like, you see a lot of brothers marrying Moroccan women and women from Turkey and things, and they seem to have a lot of issues as well. You get a lot of people marrying reverts, and when it doesn't go well, she goes back to her parents, and then the kid's now eating halal food and she's not really teaching them Islam, and he's like, oh God, why did I get married to her kids? And they end up in court for children and issues like that. So yeah, you see more of that kind of thing now. I think as communities are growing and obviously Asian families are accepting more and more outside cultures, I think that's what I've seen change.
Great. I want to focus now on men versus women, if I can put it that way. In your professional experience, who would you say is more responsible for marriages ending in divorce? Would it be men or women?
I would say women more. I think women are always the first ones. They're just quite fast. When I say they're fast, they tend to kind of act fast, like, oh, it's not working out. Oh, he's being difficult. What shall I do? And obviously I'm saying it from my own background as being a scholar as well. I think women generally, we are quite emotional. So when we have someone shouting at us or calling us names, we get quite upset thinking, I want a divorce. Men are different. Men will not kind of resort to getting legal advice or taking action unless it's like towards the end and they can see it or they have to do something. So I've always noticed that. So it's quite weird because obviously we do a lot of international divorces. There's only a handful of family lawyers, so we get a lot of conflicts. We always get the woman calling us first and the man calling after. So it's quite common. So the woman will always reach out first, and then when the man contacts us, and we always have to say, well, there's a conflict because we know that the woman's reached out first. I think men react slower and they kind of wait. And they won't just, for example, file a divorce or want to file a divorce straight away. They will only get there when they think, you know what, I need to do something. Women kind of push it more, file more, definitely. Men will react more to children as opposed to women for divorce. Men will be more like, right, she's left. She's taken my kids. She's not letting me see them. What can I do about that? As opposed to divorce. But some men will just say, look, I need to do a divorce. It's been years. We've been separated. What's next? Women, on the other hand, will react and say, I want a divorce now. I don't know if he's been cheating or he's been doing this. No, I'm just not tolerating it anymore. Send him divorce papers. So yeah, I would definitely say women are the instigators more.
Okay. So this is a bit of a mouthful of a question. So just bear with me. So the last guest on our podcast made a statement that I want your view on. It was Dr. Asif from The Apprentice, also a divorce coach. He said, and I quote him, that men are guilty until proven innocent when it comes to family law and divorce. He went on to mention that if a woman states that she was abused by a partner, the court assumes that the partner is guilty. But if a man was to say he was abused by his partner, it's for him to prove. I know it's an American case, but he used Amber Heard and Johnny Depp as a perceptional example. I just want to know, what's your view on this statement, and does the UK law favour women, in your opinion?
I think the UK law, when a woman says, I've been abused, they also don't just take her word for it. They actually do need to see evidence. For example, are you familiar with what a non-molestation order is? Like an injunction?
Yeah.
So when a woman says, I need a restraining order, for example, my ex-husband or my ex-partner is abusing me, stalking me, he's sending me these messages, she has to satisfy the court that she's entitled to one based on domestic violence or abuse. Now, if the man comes forward and says, actually, she's abusing me as well, here's my evidence, she's actually been harassing me and stalking me, and this is my evidence, the court will also take note of that. So I think the court has become more and more used to men being abused as well. But yes, he's right to a certain degree that women do get the upper hand because women are always seen as obviously a bit more nurturing, a bit weaker in that sense. Men obviously can be a bit more aggressive. I think that's what he's trying to refer to. But I think the courts don't favour women in that sense. What they do, if she's got evidence, then they have to honour that. They have to say, well, we've seen evidence of abuse, that she's been beaten up or she's gone to hospital, or there's messages showing that you're being aggressive. But if he turns around and says, actually, I've got evidence too, they will also look at that as well. And then maybe even think that actually the woman's being the aggressive one and the woman's been actually abusing him. There's evidence here. The problem is men don't come forward that easily to say, actually, I'm a victim. Actually, she's been pushing me around, shoving me around, throwing things at me when she's, for example, it could be a non-Muslim when she's drunk or something. And I think more and more men are becoming a bit more vocal about it, but it's still an issue. So what he's probably referring from is just a general status quo, which, to be honest, looks like the case. It's like saying, oh, women always get custody over men. women don't get custody. Courts just follow the status quo. If the woman's doing everything with the kids, she's looking after them all day and you're working all day, then the court's not going to change that. They're going to keep that routine going. But it looks like to other people outside, why is a woman getting favoured? She's not. But if the father was the main carer, doing everything, a woman's working all the time and travelling, then the court would honour that as well. So, roles are changing. But I think what he is referring to is from his experience, from my experience, I would say that that's not what I would say 100%. But yes, they don't just favour the mothers. They look at evidence. And a family court will always look at a balance of probability. They don't look at it that they need actual official evidence. What they see is if they see that there's messages or evidence of an ex-partner being aggressive or being violent, then they will take that on board. Doesn't mean that they will then say that person's guilty. They will just say it looks like that they were doing that. It looks like he was controlling. It looks like he was being aggressive in those messages, unless the father or the man can prove that he wasn't doing that and that she was doing something. So that's how it actually works from a legal perspective.
On the back of that, so we get many divorced men who we have come across who end up saying that through a divorce, they've lost their house, they've lost custody of their children, they have to pay maintenance for the children, leaving them in a very, very dark place. In your experience, how common is this type of scenario?
About child maintenance?
Well, I mean, men basically saying that, look, we've undergone a divorce. We've ended up losing our house, which was initially my house. The guy would say it was my house. So it's now no longer my house. I've had to get out of my house. It's gone to my ex-wife. I don't have my kids. And I have to pay maintenance. And I'm basically left with nothing.
That's a good point to make. So what I would suggest is that what these men are going through, I mean, to be honest, what happens is if she's got children and there is a joint property or the property is his name, sometimes the court, if she's got nowhere else to go, what does he expect? Obviously, she needs to stay somewhere. She can't be on the streets. So essentially, the court will sometimes say that she can stay there until the children finish education or get a certain age and you have to continue paying, which I get. Sometimes he's like, well, what about me? But obviously, if he can't afford to keep the house and obviously rehouse himself, then the court will look at those options. But then, of course, he's got to pay maintenance as well. They're his kids. He's got to pay something, especially if she isn't really bringing much to the table in terms of income as well. So I think what people need to focus on is not, I've got a bad deal as a father, as a responsible guardian, even if from a Sharia perspective. Even in UAE, for example, when you go to court, women think that, oh, Sharia is against me. It's not. Men actually have to pay up. You have to pay for accommodation. You have to pay school fees. You have to pay for healthcare. You have to pay for a nanny if there's one. There's quite a lot of expenses you have to pay, and you have to pay maintenance. So she's got money to feed these kids and look after them. So if you're going to get married and have kids, you need to understand there's a lot of responsibility. So yes, you don't need to give her any income. So there's no kind of spousal maintenance from a Sharia perspective, but from a legal perspective, as a Muslim man, you do need to do that. So I think even here, does he want his kids to be on the street? He's got an obligation to them. You might hate the wife or the mother. You might have a million reasons why you don't like her, but they're still your kids. If there's no children, then there's no obligation to do all of that. The house can be sold or he can take it over. But I think what men fail to understand is it's not anyone being unfair. It's understanding that you have, as Islamically as well, you are the legal guardian of these kids, even if you're not kind of living with them anymore or you're seeing them on a certain case. So I think what needs to be corrected here is that he shouldn't see that he's got a bad deal. He needs to understand what his responsibilities are, and from a legal perspective and a Sharia perspective, that he needs to fill these.
If you are British, Muslim and looking for marriage, then you have to attend our upcoming marriage event happening in Manchester on Sunday the 28th of July 2024. This event is a platform to assist British Muslims find a spouse. Each participant will have the opportunity to speak to each potential on both a one-to-one basis and in a group discussion. We have had people get married via our events in the past. In fact, recently, as part of promoting our upcoming marriage event on the 28th of July 2024, we sent a promotional email out to everyone on our database. And one sister responded to say, Mohammed, I want to give you good news. I attended your last event in 2023 and I found my husband. And she got married to him in April of this year, alhamdulillah. So remember, our events almost always sell out. To book your space, please visit www.singlemuslimsmarriageevents.co.uk or click the link in the show notes below. I definitely need to ask you about prenuptial agreements, because this is something that is often debated in the context of our line of work. So first of all, in the UK, what is the legal position when it comes to prenuptial agreements? There seems to be a debate amongst the people we come across that whether they are legally binding or not. Tell us the official position.
So with prenuptial agreements, in the UK, they are not 100% binding. So what happens is you can prepare one, you can have solicitors do it or lawyers, you both can have lawyers each. You can prepare this agreement, it gets witnessed and it gets kept. Doesn't get registered with any court in the UK. But if this couple is going to divorce after they are married, this can potentially be looked at by a court. So they will look at it, but the judge still has the discretion in the UK to see whether or not he wants to follow that or not. It just depends. That's the issue we have in the UK and a lot of the countries. Whether or not it's 100% binding, it's still a good thing to have because you and your future spouse-to-be can put things down. Islamically, you're allowed to have a pre-marriage contract. That's what it's called. So even in Islam, if you're getting married, you can put certain conditions down as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's allowed as part of before you get your Islamic contract done. So the same way, you can put certain things down as well.
So in Islam, are you allowed to say, as part, like you call it, the pre-marriage contract, if this marriage was to end, then X, Y, and Z, like that?
Yeah. So for example, if it's a Muslim couple in the UK and she's got her own money from her own work or her family's given her certain things, or she's got her name on properties with family members, or she's doing quite well, he's got things as well. Islamically, she shouldn't be taking anything because what's hers is hers and what's his is his, right? But in the UK, the courts still look at all of that and say, well, actually, it doesn't matter if it's all in her name with her family members. He has an interest, so he should have a share. Likewise, he's got things, she should have a share. So they could, as a Muslim couple living in the UK, write a pre-marriage contract, a prenuptial agreement to say, look, we don't want to follow that. We will want to follow this. And a court can look at that intention. So that's quite important for Muslim couples to be aware of who are living in this country and Sharia law is not applied. Now in the UAE, prenuptial agreements are binding, so we do them all the time. It's very popular, and they can file one with the court when they're getting married to say that we want this to be applied. So lots and lots of people are doing them all over the world, and courts do look at them. But like I said, in the UAE, it's now like they say you should do one, and they file it with the court. So like I said, I think for Muslim couples, they should be aware that they should do one, even if it's a very basic one. And it could be even like women can even say that my husband will give me the right to divorce him should he do A, B, or C. You know, my husband will also commit, like Arabs, for example, they will say he is to give me 2 maids, one for me, one for the children. He has to give me this much allowance if I have 1 child. He has to give me this much allowance if I have 2 children or more. He has to also provide me with this and that. And they've got a lot of conditions. So I don't think it's anything new. I think it's just something that people should be doing. I think it's very good to have that. A lot of couples, I get calls saying, I want to do one, but I'm scared to tell him or scared to mention it to her and her family because I think they might take offense. But I have got things and I want it to be all clear. So I think it's still seen as a bit of a taboo sometimes because socially, I don't think people are used to doing them, especially the British Muslim community or Asian community in the UK. But I think it definitely should be something that's encouraged more and more. I am getting a lot more calls, but again, sometimes the other side is not reciprocating it that well. So they don't tend to go ahead with it.
You clearly have many divorce stories that you've obviously experienced, right? I want to discuss divorce stories with yourself. Can you share any divorce stories that you have dealt with that stands out for you? Any like stories that you would say that's the worst divorce story I've ever heard, you ever come across? Anything that you can share?
God, I get so many. I've got one that I can definitely talk about. So this case, they both were Pakistani, got married in Pakistan. They came to the UK. He was like part of Pakistan's intelligence or something. He was like a colonel. He was very high up and they had a lot of wealth. And they kind of lived, they bought things all over the world and they had like, flats in central London, properties in the States, properties in Pakistan, offshore accounts, loads of things, lots of investments. And they lived together and they had 2 children. And this is a recorded case, so I can talk about it. We got involved because he apparently divorced her in Pakistan, but he never did it officially in the UK or did a clean break consent order, which means that he said, now we're divorced, I've given you your settlement, you're not going to come back after anything more. And this is obviously a sticking point for a lot of people. She, years later, went to the UK court and said, hang on, he divorced me in Pakistan Islamically, as part of the Sharia court there, but he never did a clean break with me, and he never gave me what he said he would. He only gave me this much, and we had millions. We had lots of wealth, and I want my share now. And he only gave me the flat in London, and that's it. And we have 2 children who are adults now, and I want X, Y, and Z, and I want maintenance, and I want this, and I want that. The court allowed her to bring that claim, and it became this massive case. And what happened was, when it started, guess what? He's remarried, he's sat in Dubai, and he's got dementia. So he doesn't remember anything. He doesn't even talk. So his new wife, this Arab woman, had to then become his litigation friend, which means that she was then saying, hang on, they may have had all this wealth, but they don't have it now. He's got no money now. We've got some money, but we don't have that much. It's all gone. And this is all I know. And she didn't know everything. And the case was like going on. And she was like, we don't even have money to pay rent. And I can't even ask him because I don't know. And there was all these other things going on all over the world with these offshore accounts. And she had 3 properties in America, which the court in the UK froze. So she was like, but they're mine. He gave them to me when we got married. But they were like, yes, but he gave them to you, but they're still his. And it was a crazy case. So he had dementia. Then guess what, Mohammed? He died. So he died during these proceedings. And when he died, the court was like, well, this is no longer a family case. It's gone off to like inheritance. Like if he has a will, the will has to be followed. And then they argued that no, she still should be getting something. And then they were like, no. And it went to the Supreme Court, and it got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court actually upheld that no, it should be inheritance rules and it shouldn't follow family rules anymore, which we knew. So it was successful in the Supreme Court. But guess what? Even before the final judgment, the wife died in London, the one who bought the claim. So both passed away. And this is like a big case. It was only finished last year. So it went to the Supreme Court. It made lots of news. So this is one case that I was involved with for a few years as well. Yeah, it was crazy. So that is definitely one case I will always mention because I think it's very unique and very different. And it just tells you that you should always have a clean break order, no matter where you get divorced, because you want to protect yourself. If you get divorced and then, Mohammed, you inherit lots of money or you become a millionaire, your ex, if you have an ex-wife, even if you would marry for long or whatever, she still potentially could try and make a claim. And that's the thing. Whether or not it's successful is a different issue. But obviously, if you've been married longer, you've got kids, you had a certain lifestyle, the court can allow you to bring a claim in the UK. So I think people need to remember that. And other countries may allow it as well.
Is there a limit in terms of duration?
No, there wasn't. So this was years later.
So you can make a claim 20 years later, 30 years later?
Potentially, yeah.
Wow. All right, there's 2 subjects that I want to further discuss with you that always cause conflict when it comes to our social media pages and generally our marriage events. And some say that they have a lot to do with divorce as well. And those subjects are polygamy and mehar. So let's start off with polygamy. In your experience, how common is this to be a reason for divorce?
It is definitely a one reason because we get lots of Muslim women calling us saying, oh, he went to Pakistan or he went to Yemen or wherever he's gone and he's remarried. And I didn't know he was and he's got another wife there. Yeah, he's not bringing her over, but I want a divorce. And you get it here that way he's married to 2 women here. So it is quite common. We get lots of calls. And I think that is a reason for divorce because I think it's definitely not really accepted as much within the British Muslim community. I think it might be accepted in other countries. It's quite normal. So in the UAE, in Qatar, and countries that we do work in, it's quite normal that he's got 2 wives and he's paying for both and they're all quite happy with each other. It's quite normal and it's quite acceptable in their culture. And he'll say, that's my brother from the first wife. And, my dad has 2 wives, one's local, one's Egyptian, one's Moroccan, and it's completely fine. But I think in the UK, it's still an issue. I think women, as soon as they find out, even if he's told them, they want a divorce and they're not going to accept it. And I think, at the end of the day, the husband, yes, he has got rights as a Muslim man to remarry and have another wife, but then he's got to accept that she may not be happy with it. So he's stuck. And then if he's got kids and he's had a life with her, then he's going to find himself in an issue. So that's the problem as well. So if more men were vocal about, look, I'm going to marry you, but I do want to have a second wife in the future. I mean, they can't always plan this kind of stuff, and sometimes it does happen. Then it would save divorces as well. But I think it's just a really difficult topic to talk about as well, because a lot of women will not accept it. I know that from my experience. I had one client, I did her case for about 3 years. He did marry another woman in the UK, but she was his official wife from Pakistan. and she accepted it for about 2 years. She told him to keep her separate, and he was quite wealthy, so he obviously kept her in a separate house, and he didn't have kids with the second wife, but she said, keep it separate, just, whatever, it's fine. She accepted it, and I think because he kept bringing the second wife to the house and causing issues, she got to a point, she said, you know what, I'm not going to take this, and she filed a divorce. And, she tried for a while, but I think there should be boundaries, even if you are going to do it. I think men need to understand that if you are going to take a second wife and the first wife is, for example, she accepts it for whatever reasons she wants to accept it for and she's happy with it, then have some boundaries where you're not bringing her to the house or you're keeping her completely separate. You're not mentioning it, but then the man might say, well, why should I do that? She's part of the family or whatever. It's very, very tricky because I think with the Asian community here, they still do not accept it. And it's still an area that's very grey. So as much as men might love that women accept these second wives or, open with it, I can't see it happening anytime soon unless things change a lot.
I mean, I just want you to put your Islamic Sharia expert hat on for a second. Is it true that if a woman was to apply for a khula solely on the basis that a husband is getting a second wife or has a second wife, that this application would be refused?
I think if you based it only on that, then potentially, yes, there could be a chance that she needs to give more reasons. It can't just be that. If she's saying, hang on, he's got a second wife, but he's not fulfilling duties to me or the kids, like he's not paying maintenance, he's not spending time with us, he's not doing all of these things, and he's become more abusive. So for example, when my client, when he got married to a second wife, if she said anything about the second wife, he used to hit her and he used to start swearing at. She had to call the police. So she had a non-molestation order against him and she got him kicked out of the house. So in that sense, she was rightfully entitled to apply for a divorce. So I think if it's just saying, oh, I've got another wife, I'm not happy with it. And maybe that was a condition when they got married that he won't take a second wife, then she potentially could use that. But I think she has to back that up for a khula application with more reasons. And then that would need to be looked at in more detail. And there'd have to be a lot more evidence of other reasons, not just a second wife. Because Islamically, of course, he's allowed to have one. But if he's then failing his obligations to his children from the first marriage, or his first wife has become abusive, or he's not paying, or, there's other issues going on, like with my client, then obviously, yes, she's entitled to apply.
Let's focus on Mehar for a second. Does this have anything to do with divorces? And the reason I'm asking that is because there's so many discussions that happen in relation to the subject of Mehar. And I don't want to say a lot. Many sisters, and we have seen in recent times, have a Mehar requirement of 50k, some 100k. I'm talking about the sisters in the UK. And I'm not criticizing them. That's ultimately their decision. It's their prerogative. And I appreciate that's prior to marriage. But in your experience, has that ever been a cause or anything to do with divorce?
Sometimes, yeah, because he's promised to pay a certain amount and then he's failed. And especially, some cultures are a bit more driven by mahars, like the Arab communities, while the Asian community is like, oh, just put £100 down, it doesn't matter. But obviously, some cultures, it's a very big deal that he's going to be paying this much, he's going to provide this. And if he doesn't do it, then potentially she could apply for a divorce based on that as well, to say he even failed to give the first payment or the first kind of amount that should have been paid. So yes, it could be a trigger point, but it just depends, I guess, which culture they're from. I think I have seen cases where it has been an issue. And when men are divorcing women, they have to pay the mahar. So they should still be paying that and they refuse to. And then the woman ends up going to a financial court. Financial courts in the UK do look at mahar amounts on nikah certificates and marriage certificates with Muslim communities. And they will look at that if there was an amount. Separately, UK courts will say that needs to be claimed from a small claims money account. Money claim you can make as well because it was a contract. So people can't escape it. It is a big thing, especially if it's like quite a lot of money. However, if the woman's applying for a khula, then she literally has to know and be advised that she has to forego. If he gives it to her, she has to accept that she's not going to accept the mahar. She will forego it in relation to him then giving her a divorce. That's the Islamic ruling.
Thank you, Sister Samara, for joining this episode. And once again, thank you to Aramas International Lawyers for sponsoring this episode. If you are British, Muslim and looking for marriage, then you have to attend our upcoming marriage event happening in Manchester on Sunday the 28th of July 2024. This event is a platform to assist British Muslims find a spouse. Each participant will have the opportunity to speak to each potential on both a one-to-one basis and in a group discussion. We have had people get married via our events in the past. In fact, recently, as part of promoting our upcoming marriage event on the 28th of July 2024, we sent a promotional email out to everyone on our database. And one sister responded to say, "Mohammed, I want to give you good news. I attended your last event in 2023 and I found my husband." And she got married to him in April of this year, alhamdulillah. So remember, our events almost always sell out. To book your space, please visit www.singlemuslimsmarriageevents.co.uk or click the link in the show notes below. This episode is sponsored by Aramas International Lawyers, with offices in Manchester, UK, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Qatar, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Aramas International Lawyers is a dedicated team of international divorce and family lawyers. This division, led by solicitor Samara Iqbal, has been set up to exclusively offer legal advice and legal services to clients around the world. For further details, please visit www.aramaslawexpat.com. وألف مبارك